Nadia Adose.
Hi, Sam.
Welcome to Tasty Humans.
Thank you.
Powered by What's On and here in the Motivate podcast studio in the lovely Media One Hotel. How you doing?
I'm doing so well. Thank you for having me. I'm thrilled to be here.
Thank you for doing this. I'm very excited about this particular topic. So please introduce yourself and what do you do?
Well, my name is Nadia Adose. I'm a Canadian, and I've been living here since 2016, on and off. And I currently direct an education support company. I'm an educator, I'm a parent, and I'm a lifelong learner as well. And currently, as I said, I direct School is Easy. I've also founded a company called Illumina. So we focus on education management. And my journey to education wasn't just straight to it. It took me quite a long time to figure out what education actually is. Are we educating? And what is teaching? Are we teaching or educating? What is the line? How do we differentiate the two? And so that's what I do.
Okay. So I think a great place to start is you have a military background.
I do.
So tell me what you were doing in the military and why you got into that particular side of it.
To start with, I got recruited when I was in high school. However, the army was never a thing. Nowhere around my environment, right? No one within my vicinity has ever talked about the military. The military was always, so my parents are from East Africa, right? So war is a common thing. So everybody's just like, war is something we avoid. Yet when I got introduced to the Canadian Army, it was intriguing because one, a lot of the stuff that we do is peacekeeping and also disaster relief. That was something that I've always believed in. So I kind of got introduced to it, and then I didn't really join until I got into the university. I got into it mainly because I went to university to study architecture. I wanted to be an architect. And then I took a course on international business. I said, oh, this is different. And I shifted. And then when I shifted, I also realized that school was not what I thought it was going to be, especially university, right? So now I need something else to kind of give me that focus that I needed. Oh, wait, the army. Okay, let's go. So I joined the army as a reservist. So I went to school Monday to Friday and Friday night until Sunday evening. I was at military camp and some evenings as well. So that's how I got into the army. And I became a combat engineer. And part of my leadership development was to educate, to teach at the Canadian Forces Military Engineer Academy. And I've also taught basic military courses. And that's also why I started realizing, wait, what are we doing? Are we teaching or are we educating? So for me, because I do come from a family that truly believes in education, I'm not educating, I'm just teaching. So I start seeing all these different things. As a combat engineer, one of the things that you are taught to do is to focus on the problem. What is the problem? My job as a Canadian Force military engineer is to help my guys to live, to move, and to fight better and deny the same to the other guys. So my brain is wired to constantly solve problems. So if you come to me, say you're an infantry guy and you say, I've got an issue. What is your issue? I need to move to where? To whatever you need to move to. All right, give me a minute. Now I have to go back and assess. I have to assess the road. Do I need to remove the mines? Do I need to build a bridge? Do I need to build, a raft? Do I need to get rid of some stuff that could potentially be a block, right? So that is my brain consistently thinking. And then when I start teaching, am I teaching the right thing? Are we actually giving them what they need in order for them to be here? I've got a type A personality, like most people.
And what is that? What does that mean?
Driven. I am focused, laser focused, and I'm going after it, right? So that is, I assess, what are my resources? What do I have? How do I need to do it? Do I need to be creative or do I have everything that I need? And that is also what kind of the army tuned, right? Like now I've gotten a lot more tighter. So now I see, and I'm just constantly, why is that happening? So in a lot of times when we work with families whose kids are struggling, my question is, why? And parents just, we don't know. Okay, well, let's figure it out before we get to anything else, right? So I constantly do root cause analysis.
Mm-hmm.
As I drive, as I talk to people, and as I educate, literally. So that's what the army was about. And
how long were you in it for?
7 years and a bit.
Okay.
So
real stint.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, and before I moved here, the plan was also to move to Air Force.
Okay.
So don't tell Paul about this.
So
'cause-
Paul Wingman. who's
Yes,
been on here
Wingman.
once
Don't tell him.
already.
Yes. So yeah.
Is it really that bad between the Air Force and the Army? Is it just healthy competition, or is it just quite? What's the right? Tell me. Is it just full of banter, or is there proper angst?
It depends. It depends on the circumstances.
Because you're operating heavy weapons each,
Right, we do. However, in a completely different platform, right?
Of course.
So, and because of it, they have a completely different perspective or perception of what we do, and we have got completely different perception of what we do and how we do it. So, at least between him and I, it's just banter. However, it could be, especially when you're in an exercise or whatnot, and you're like, oh, here comes the Air Force.
Yeah.
So, I'm sure you won't like it, but I'm still a friend, so I don't want to lose my friend, so I'm going to stop talking about that.
Fair enough.
Okay.
So look, you've actually said teaching versus education twice already in the first sort of 3 to 4 minutes. So what do you constitute is the difference between teaching and educating?
Teaching is instructing, right? So when I teach you something, I will give you guidelines as to how to do it. Right? I tell you step 1, step 2, step 3. And I expect you to do it that as well. Educating is a lot more different, because when I'm educating you, I might show you how to do it, and then I show you how I do it, and I said, what did you think about it? Right? So now I go into your head, and I try to figure out how you consume information first off, and I also try to see how you see it. Because part of being an educator isn't just me giving you all the right answers, but rather, wait, this is how we've been taught, or this is what the instructions have said, and this is what it is. I'll tell you what they are, and I say, well, you tell me what you see now, right? A lot of times we don't do that, mainly because in a school circumstance or in a school environment, when you've got about 45 minutes to teach kids, and you've got 25, right? That's, I think, the average, 25 kids. You've got about less than 2 minutes per student, and you don't have the luxury of time to be able to do that. So that's where we come in, right? Like educators, a lot of time we ask the questions, why do you see it that way, right? For me, it clicked when I heard this conversation. Someone said, I don't remember who it was, they said, we educate our kids out of their creativity.
Yes. Yeah, that's
What?
an interesting statement.
Well, I said, what?
Why would you want to do that?
But do we even know you're doing it,
Yeah.
right? Because at school, we're told how to behave, we're told how to walk, we're told how to sit, right? We're told how to do things, and that's what it is. But do we focus on other things the same way, right? What else are we educating our kids out of, right?
Yep.
Right. So
Yeah,
for me, that was it, right? So I'm connecting dots. I'm like, wait. So now, when I sit down with parents and the kids, and I always say, what do you think? Because usually mom and dad, I'm like, oh, we're having trouble, please, can we sit down? I said, yeah, of course, let's sit down. And then I listen to what mom and dad are saying, and I turn, and I said, what do you think? And now they're just like, I don't think anything. Well, you must think something.
Yeah.
Right now, they said, no. Well, I'm like, mom and dad, could you give us, 10 minutes? And then I get to it. And it's mind-boggling to me how different those conversations are. Because as parents, especially I find it here in the UAE, because as expats, we live a very, very busy life.
Mm-hmm.
And majority of the times, our kids spend over 8 hours a day at school.
Yes.
And how many hours do they spend with us? Conscious time.
Or a nanny.
Or a nanny.
Yeah.
Right? Or a nanny.
So it's more like, how much time do they not spend?
Well,
With
you're
the
right.
parents.
Right.
I don't have kids, so that's
And that's
something
okay.
I think I should say.
Right. I'm
now
a parent, right?
Is that I don't have kids, so I'm not qualified to.
Right. I'm a parent, and I see it. Because you don't have your village you would have if you were back home. Mom, dad, or maybe siblings or neighbors, whatever it might be, right? So here you have to do all of it yourself. And that's what the reality of it is. And they spend about 8 hours at school. And then you got the rest of it, maybe a nanny an hour or two. And how much time do you actually spend with them?
No, it's just.
And how many time do you actually spend having that conversation with them? What is bothering you today? What is going on? What was school like today? We don't have it. We try to. It's not because we're neglectful parents. It's just the circumstance of our lives as an expat, it doesn't allow us, right? So, and I always ask the kids, I'm like, and then they say, oh, no one actually ever asked me that question. Well, I'm asking you now. What is the issue? Why are you struggling? Because a lot of times we don't go back. Have you always struggled with this specific subject matter? No. What is changing now? What has happened for you to get to this point? We've got tutors, of course. We're more than happy to place them, but why do we need the tutor? Is it the tutor that we need? Or is it the environment that we need to change? Or is it something else that's happening that maybe we should need to address? So, yeah.
Can I ask, were you asked these questions when you were going through, say, primary school? I'm trying to recollect now. It was a very long time ago for me.
Right. That's the thing, no. Right? Because as when you go to school, you're going to school. That's what your job is, right? And no one ever asks. It's just like, oh, you're struggling. The school will tell you, you're failing. You failed your math, right? And you're like, oh, crap.
Yeah, I think thinking about it, I mean, not to go into detail, I had a turbulent school life. Nothing majorly bad, but just wasn't really engaged into it and seemed to be very kind of, I'd say, maybe a bit attention-seeky, kind of flippant in how I was reacting in classrooms. I wasn't a terrible troublemaker, but I was maybe humorously disruptive. That's how I would like to put it. But I do recall many conversations that did involve me about, well, because the point I'm trying to make is that I think that I did have direct parental contact where I was raised by a mother, dad worked, and in reference to what you're saying, if you have two working parents or you are communicating with a nanny that might not be from your part of the world, et cetera, that's what I'm trying to say, is there now a greater distance between the parents and the child where it's almost accepted now that this is how they're raised?
I'd like to say it all depends on, each family is different, correct? So is there the risk of that? Absolutely. Right. Whether we like it or not, the reality of it. Are parents trying to do more in order to be a lot more involved? Absolutely. However, the reality is a reality, right? Like you spend, again, 9 hours, maybe 10 hours at work, you come home and maybe you might not even have the time or the mental capacity to get into it, right? And that's a reality of it. And also, I believe that we know a lot more about education now than we did before, right? So during my time, I would seek my math teacher. I'm like, oh, and I loved math. Like I didn't really do, and I would count every little, point that I had. Well, I should have had this amount of, and he would smile and he said, okay, Nadia, let's do that. And like, thank you, and I was one of those kids, like on it and consistently working hard and consistently, making sure I'm supposed to be where I am where I'm supposed to be. So, but I think in a lot of ways as well, now kids also have got a lot more access to many different things that we didn't have, whether that's, social media or whatever it might be. So now, you say, so what is education? Like, how does all this kind of go into educating our kids? Are we educating our kids? To what end?
Yeah.
Right? Because as a parent, my biggest fear is for me not to be able to provide my daughter the kind of education she requires or to get her to where she needs to be in the future, right? Although now, especially the last few years, have taught us what is the future. We have no clue, right? We have no clue.
Yeah.
We have no clue the schools that they're currently going into could potentially be helping them to be whatever they could be when they grow up.
I think, I think you're absolutely right. And in the sense of, that is actually an amazing statement. I'm sorry, which is just with the speed that technology is advancing and AI is advancing and social media is having its positive / hugely negative impact, I think, on people, especially kids, that you don't know that if in 5 years' time, everything that someone's being taught in their final year at school now will be completely irrelevant due to how you will implement.
What?
Yeah, that's wild. So yeah, that's crazy. Yeah.
So what can we do though, right? Like, what can we do to mitigate from like for our kids not to feel like they're not doing what they're supposed to be doing? Maybe we should go back and reassess what education actually is, right? So I remember having this conversation with someone, and I said, what can I like, what can I emphasize when it comes to educating kids? Teach them, like, for them to learn how to be literally dynamic in a sense where they need to be elastic. And I said, what? What do you mean? And like, they need to learn how to fall and get out and dust themselves and get on the horse. They need to learn how to learn consistently, because that's it, right? Because we truly think that, or the school kind of makes us think that, well, when the school is over, close the books and then throw them out and then we're good to go, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I no more so singularly personified. Now I'm thinking about it, of the classic shot of they've just finished graduation, so they take off their mortarboards, is that right? And throw them. Thank God it's over. Do you know what I mean?
You know what I mean? And that's exactly what it is, right? But that's not it. And I remember saying, okay, well, so what should we focus on, right? Are we focusing on emotional intelligence? Are we focusing on their ability to learn anything, whatever it might be, right? Are we focusing on their ability to be mobile? You know, and because we're kind of stuck. We've been globalizing since what, World War II, right? The whole concept came at that time, right? And we've been moving forward definitely. And now we do live in a place or in a world where, you know, moving is so easy. However, are we kind of, you know, getting that into our kids? Because the way you program them is how they function, whether we like it or not, right?
Yeah.
Environment is the greatest influence. Period. That's it. I read something that was really, really intriguing to me. They said changing the school for kids has about 5% effect on their lives. However, leaving them in a place where kids are not being motivated or influenced, right, to do better, to go beyond what the school book provides them, well, they will carry that for the rest of their lives. And that's what it is, right? So are they being influenced to do better? Or is it just being taught, you know, like, I'm just teaching you, you know, to do 1 + 1 is 2. How does that apply to me? Why do I care?
Yeah, why? Yeah.
Right? Especially when you're talking to kids that are kinesthetic, where everything they see is, you know, 3D. Everything they see is digital, you know, and you're sitting there, you're trying to tell them 2 + 2 is 4. And they're like, wonderful. Why do I care again? Right? So,
yeah.
If you don't connect.
Do you think that, you know, one thing we all know, I would challenge every human being in the world to, this is a big statement, to actually, because I've just said, you know, 8 billion people feel this way if you ask them.
Right.
That we all get to a certain age and we realize all I had to do was just commit to it. So, you know, I always wanted to be a professional footballer. I think we, like men my age, coming from the UK, we all did, right? Yeah. And you think at the time, I can't do it, I'm not good enough, I have to, and you know, and for me, it was the commitment side of training and yeah, I was lazy, no doubt. I was lazy, you know, and that's why that never came to fruition. But you kind of grow older and you look back and you think, only a handful of them are truly special. The rest of it is just commitment. And you kind of go, oh, I wish somebody like taught me that one mental thing, which was, if you can do it, you could do anything, you know, anyone can do anything. We just don't understand that principle at that age, where it's kind of the most important age to get it sort of put into you.
It's that, and also no one actually ever kind of nudges you, like, just stick to it, you'll see what happens, right? And then we don't also go back. So in the army, whenever you do an exercise, you write or you sit down for after action report. No one ever does that, right? So we had a full year. So let's sit down. Where did we start? This is where you start. You started, right? And this is where you are. And look at the amount of work you've done. Look, you know, the commitment you've made and how far have you gotten? You know, so we never do that. So we never teach our kids that, right? For me, the army taught me that. So it was just, for me, it was just go, 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 go. Absolutely. I had that. I had the, you know, the willingness to do the work, the willingness to commit to it and all that. But I never knew how to go back and reassess, right? So the army taught me that. It doesn't matter how great this exercise might have gone. You know, you always have to sit down and say, okay, what happened? What went right? Yeah. Why did it go right? How many times have you ever said that? Things go right? Wonderful. Let's move on. Great. How many times have you ever asked, why did it go right? But we always say, why did it go wrong? Because
what could we have done better?
Right, you know, right. You say, what went wrong? Why did it go wrong? What could we do better next time? Right? But nobody ever says, why did it go right? Right? So what are some of the things that have happened that could potentially we have gotten to where we have gotten to? And I always say, well, yeah, I did really well. I'm like, why? They say, what? I did really well. I said, yes, why? I'm like, well, I don't know. Let's sit down.
Yeah, that's super interesting. That you can, as a child, run home and say, I got an A today. And everyone goes, well done. But no one goes, how did you do that?
Yeah.
Everyone just likes the end result that you got there. And then they assume that
you're going to repeat that again.
You're going to repeat that.
Right.
And then you don't. And then that's what they're more worried about, which is, how did you get it so wrong this time?
Right.
Yeah, no, this, 100% right.
I'm telling you, I worked with a student last year, 2 years ago. He was literally having panic attacks because he was feeling he wasn't doing really well in one specific subject, because it started bleeding into his conscious, or his mindset. He was trying to do really well on his other courses as well. And I just said, like, all right, so what's going on? He says, I'm not doing really well. I'm like, okay, why are you not doing really well? He said, I don't know. Okay, well, let's recess. What are you doing really well on? He says, I'm doing well on this course. I'm like, why are you doing well on this course? I just said I'm doing really well. I'm like, yeah, I don't need help with that. I didn't ask for it. I'm not offering for help. I'm asking, why are you doing really well on that one? And I remember working on just that mindset. And he's got into one of the best universities right now. And it had nothing to do with the tutors he worked with. It was all about the mindset. Why? And we don't ask the why. We always ask the why when it comes to something going wrong. Okay?
Yeah.
So, and how do we change that?
So how do you change that?
That's the thing. I always ask parents, like, do you do that? They said, no. Okay. Would you be willing to start this or ask these questions? They're like, yeah, we could. I'm like, let's do that, And I assess always what we're right. And I do it with each student too, right? Not just the parents. I said, please, parents, if you're available, please stay. And I said, okay, what went right? What went wrong? And I remember talking to this kid last year. He said, why do I have to learn so many rules for math? I said, okay, you don't want to learn the rules for math? He says, no. I said, okay. Are there rules in this house? He says, yes. She makes the rules, my dad or my mom. I said, okay, what happens if you don't follow the rules? He says, well, a lot of things would go wrong. And I said, it's the same with math. There are a reason why there are rules. A lot of people work really, really hard to come up with these rules. So that way it's easier for us to use these, equations and concepts, right? And they're hoping that somebody in our generation will also come up with something better. So that way the next generation could do, can use it a lot easier. And that's why we've got rules. He said, oh, okay, that makes sense. I'm like, right, let's do it. A lot of times it has nothing to do with academics. I'm telling you, it has everything to do with the mindset. It has everything to do with us asking those questions. Why? We forgot to do that, I think. We forgot.
Do you think that there's not enough attention paid at a schooling level into what people... So I always subscribe to the notion that everyone's good at one special thing. Whether you discover it or not is up to life. You know what I mean?
True.
Where some people get to the age of 50 before they realize that they've got one of the best singing voices ever, But it's like, I suppose, when you talk about math and numbers and everything like that, if suddenly people can look at somebody that's doing very well in math and just think, should be an accountant.
Right.
You know what I mean? But then they've just gone and said numbers for numbers, where if you are very, very good with numbers, but you're very, very good at maybe a art or a design or a craft or something like that, then it's things like, okay, that plus that now equals engineer.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? And then it's like, oh, they're actually quite good with computers, and so on, so on, so on. But like you say, do you think that people are just sort of pigeonholing kids or making too many early assessments and then trying to fire them off in that direction just to go, okay, cool. Like I think we've got something, instead of trying to go, right, okay, here's a lot more of a deep dive, like you say, into the why. And the why that they got an A in that test is not just because they're good at numbers, because they saw this bigger picture, and can send people, because I think maybe we all come out of school and university, get to the age of 20 and we think we know everything. And we spoke about this when we first met, which was my statement on the fact that anyone that thinks you're a man at 18 is an absolute lunatic, where I think we all know that you get to about 26 and you have your first kind of mid-20s crisis where you realize you're going to get older, and then you suddenly start to assess your life. But like I say, it's then we get to a point where we think we need to look back at what we're doing and oh, I wish I'd done that, or I find a different skill, but you think time is lost. And how do you think that could be honed in at an earlier point?
So, like you said, right, schooling system kind of funnels you into whatever you might be. You've got like all these tests, and then they assess, what you could potentially become, I think in a lot of ways you're sort of cutting them in the knees, right? Because why do we have to kind of, sort of send them to one corner? Why not explore everything, right? I'll tell you, I got into education. I agree with you, by the way. Everybody comes into this world with whatever kind of, call it magic, call it a gift, right? If everybody could be a doctor, we would all be doctors, right? However, that's not what the reality is. So why do we have to kind of send them to one direction, right? I wanted to be an architect, and yet I'm currently doing education, and I love it, and I can see the kind of progress I'm making, especially with our students, right? But had you asked me this when I was 18, 22, when I was with the army, doing in the army, and no, I would not have gotten, or not have said, what, teaching? I'm like, no. Mind you, I taught math in high school when I was in high school. Okay. Part of my 40-hour community service was literally tutoring math, but it never occurred to me.
Community service?
Yes. So in Ontario, in order for you to graduate high school, you have to do 40-hour community service. Okay.
Because in the UK, if you do community service, it means you didn't go to prison.
Oh, God, no. no.
Sorry.
It's all right. Yes. Okay. So, yeah, you have to do community service, and you can do it in anything, right? So for me, I'm like, oh, wait, what do I like to do? I like to teach math. I'm going to teach math. But it never occurred to me it would be something I could do as a career, right? Like as something I would get into. And part of my leadership development in the army was to teach. Okay. And that's how I got into it. And I was like, wait, I can do this so well, and I love doing it. And that's when I moved here and I started working as a corporate trainer. And I start kind of seeing all these different things. I'm like, wait, why is this happening, not happening? I think the fact that I came to a completely different world or part of the world also kind of gave me a completely different perspective and perception of what education is. Because education is completely different in North America than it is here. And what people truly believe is an education. Right? So, and I started saying, wait, no, that's not what education is, And when I started working with School is Easy, that was one of the things that I was so interested in, because School is Easy has this amazing program where it sits kids down and say, let's figure out how you consume information. And I say, what? Yeah, let's do that. Because they spend over 8 hours at school, and then they're coming home and you're sticking them in a room with a tutor. Well, that's going to work out really well, right? So how about we figure out how they consume information, and then let's, work around that. Yeah. Because I truly believe one student is just one student. We don't have a box that fits all, and it doesn't exist. If people believe that, it doesn't exist. One student is just one student. You might have things that could overlap, but it doesn't exist. So what is it for you?
But you're right, because that's exactly the same point as when you're at school and you have your friends, right. And you get to that point where, if you stay at the same school, say you graduate primary school, you move to secondary school, you're going to be, I think it's 4 years with the same people, and you form your gang of friends. And then you actually, secondary school, you'll go through puberty and you'll start to have all these experiences, and you're being sort of nurtured for the next step. And then you get to like 16, 17 and everything. But I remember a lot of us were more concerned about staying together as friends, right, and going to the same university or the same college than actually individualizing and going off to do, what you become passionate about, which actually takes hold in either a positive or a negative way when you get into your early 20s, when you actually come out of that and suddenly you realize that you have the friends that you thought you'd all live down the same street together forever. You know, we're all buy houses next to each other and everything like this. And before you know it, one of them goes like, no, I'm moving 500 miles away because that's what I want to do. And then suddenly you start to focus on your own. And we all kind of end up there eventually. And as I've said earlier, like we seem to be circling back to the same point, which is how do we get this going on coming out of school instead of waiting that 5-year period?
We're not given a choice.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? We're not given a choice, right? Some certain schools right now are coming up with programs that individualizes learning, right? This is what you like to do. How can we encourage you, right? How can we inspire you to do better, right? And then let's propel you to where you need to be. There are certain things you will have to learn, in order for you to be a better individual, whatever it might be. How do we support you to get you to where you need to be, right? So one of the programs we've got at School at Easy, we call it helping kids become their own hero. How can I help you become your own hero? Why do I have to always come and rescue you? Because we're kind of literally programming kids to believe in being rescued, right? Whether it's mom and dad or it's a nanny or whatever it might be. There's always someone to rescue you.
Yes,
right?
yes.
We're programming kids into that. But who's going to rescue you when you're 27, you're 28?
Interesting statement.
Right? Like, because you and I had this conversation. You said, when you were 26, what happened when you were 26?
Oh,
when
for
you
me?
woke up, yeah.
Oh, it's okay. I remember. So I remember being. What was I 26? It would have been 2002, going into 2003, and I'd got a job as a general manager of a restaurant, and I thought I'd made it.
Okay.
I was, I got this title. Do you know what I mean? But I wasn't enjoying the restaurant, and I didn't feel like I was fulfilling my potential. And I was in a relationship, and I didn't know which one to. We're really airing some dirty laundry here. I didn't know.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
I didn't know which one to was causing me the anxiety, so I got rid of them both. But I remember my very, very best friend at the time is definitely like an older brother to me. We don't actually have a lot of contact now, which is a shame. But I remember calling him up and saying, "Ooh," but he was 4 years older than me.
Right.
So he's just turned 30 odd. And I was, I don't know, I'm feeling all this anxiety. I don't know if I'm doing the right thing. I feel, like getting older. I really felt like life was about to almost end.
Right.
Where I've missed all these opportunities. And we're talking out, and he said to me, "How old are you now?" I said, "I'm 26. And without shadow of a doubt, he went, "No, you're 26. And he goes, same thing happened to me.
Right.
He said, I think one of the references I made to you was you read your magazine. At the time then, it wasn't digital. So we had GQ for Him magazine loaded. And you read these things religiously, full of pop culture and foolish stuff. And then you would see they'd all got the adverts in the Armani ads and the H&M ads and car ads. And you started to look at the female models or the male models, and you used to think, geez, he looks about 12, but then you have this, well, he can't be,
right.
He's got to be 18 or 20. And then you're just like, I'm going to get old. You know what I mean? And then suddenly everything, and I the longer I've progressed in life, I've seen this in so many people where I've gone, how old are you? I'm 27. And I'm like, yeah, you know what I mean? It's that inner panic that time's running out.
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Yeah. When it's actually not, but you do have to make some decisions.
Absolutely. And that's also what it is, right? So do we make a decision early enough for us to say, oh, well, this didn't work? Well, let's try that. We never say that. And a lot of times that's also what I was saying about let them fall. Let them learn to get up, dust themselves and get on it again, right? We don't teach that of our kids. Or when our kids are struggling and we look at their report and go, oh my God, we need a tutor right now.
Mm-hmm.
But the kids have never come to us and say, I need a tutor. Why do you need a tutor? And that's what I always ask. Whenever we get called in, and this is what I always do, is let's go in, sit down. Oh, we need a tutor. For what? For math. Why? Our kid is struggling. Why are they struggling? Or why is he or she struggling? We don't know. Okay, let's talk to the kid. Hi. Are you struggling with math? Yes. Why are you struggling? Well, I don't know. Have you always struggled? No. Okay, what changed? Right? So a lot of times, because we're always playing the rescuer, we kind of deprive them of that opportunity for them to fail. If they failed grade 11, their life is not going to be over.
Yeah.
Right? Oh, well, you failed. All right, let's go back and let's reassess. Right? We never do that. Like, I'm terrified as a parent that I might never be able to do that for my daughter. So whenever we do certain things, and Mom, this is what happened. Well, yeah, why did it happen? And she's 4. My daughter's 4, and she goes, I don't know. Well, let's, next time we do it, we'll figure it out. I had to literally teach myself of that, because I see it in so many different kids that we work with. It has nothing to do with their abilities. It has nothing to do with their intelligence. They are smart kids. However, these skills that we're supposed to build in them, especially in this day and age, isn't there. And yet we expect them. Oh, you're going off to college in the UK or North America, whatever else, and you're supposed to survive. Mm-hmm. You're supposed to make all these decisions, and you're supposed to know how they will turn out.
You're a man now.
Right.
You're a woman now.
Right. Off you go.
Over 18 now.
Right.
If you go, my job is done.
Right. And then they crash, and then all of a sudden, like, oh no, let's, like, well, let them figure it out. Give them an opportunity. Maybe this might be an opportunity for them to say, oh wait, maybe there are other things that I actually like to do. Maybe there are other things I need to explore, right? Because we never let them explore. Academics is so important to us, especially based on my experience so far, that we forget the rest of it. We forget for them to become a whole person that, falls, gets up and say, oh, well, that was rough. All right, so where do I go now? Do I need to go back and reassess, or do I need to move away from this, or do I need to kind of come up with something else? That's what the Army did for me.
Do you know, I was going to say, everything that we're talking about is kind of based around the individual's desire to want to do it.
Right.
Okay. Now, I come from the UK, and I know that there's a lot. So there's a lot of people that come out of school and university and they don't want to work, and they want to claim benefits, and they want to live in this particular world that they live in. And do you think that the opportunities to go and discover something are limited or not focused on because of what can happen if you just kind of allow people to, so like you say, you're in the Army. I would assume my understanding of the Army is they don't allow you to not do it. Do you know what I mean? And it kind of comes back to maybe a statement of, there used to be a time where you would leave school and you had to go in the Army.
Right.
And I've always thought, my dad used to say this, what you could do with is a year in the Army, get some discipline into you. And I think coming as an 80s kid, I think there's a lot of people that would have had that said to them. And like, is that system something that could sort of bash everyone into shape a bit?
I wouldn't say everyone, right? So I'm a city girl. Like, I had no clue what the Army was or is, aside from what I've seen in the movies, right? So I've never even used a hand tool, right? Yet I went in there to become an engineer. Not knowing what an engineer does, by the way. It was just like, oh, as an engineer, you get to build, you get to, build bridges and all these great things. And I said, oh, that sounds about right, never done it. It must be fun, right? It's because I was given an option, right? I was given an opportunity. If no one has said that to me, if no one has introduced that to me, it would have been like unknown to me. Like, I would have not known anything about it. What the Army did for me, I can't speak for everybody, was, like I said, sort of hone my skills, right? So once you get into the Army, there's no left or right, right? That's what you're going to do. You sign your name there. I was actually talking about this with Paul. Your leadership development it could go one way or the other. You can be screaming and kicking and get yelled at and being, throwing into a ditch and get there. Or you can embrace it. You say, I'm going to learn this thing, and I'm going to capitalize on it, and I'm going to ride it to whatever it's going to take me. And then you come out of it with a completely different perspective. You're going to be a leader. And if you decide the other way, it's the same thing. You can be kicking and screaming. It doesn't matter. You're going to get there one way or another, because that's what it's already set for you, right? So for me, what the army did was, it's not just about the leadership quality I had already. Like, I knew how to, make decisions. I'm the oldest in my family. I'm already making decisions that, however, what it did for me is it literally gave me an opportunity to work in a completely different perspective, to have that focus, laser focused on, like, okay, what am I doing? And everything else becomes a noise, right? And then you're like, this is what I need to get to. It could be, people could be screaming and yelling and whatever else could be. I'm not sure what's going on, because that's my focus, right? You could be asking me, Nadia, what's going on there? I'm like, where? I don't know what you're talking about, because that's what I see, right?
But this is what they don't teach you at school.
No.
And this I think is just the most interesting part, because going off what I've just said about what my old man would say to me, I was taught maths, English,
right.
geography, history, craft, arts, physical education, etc.,
yeah.
right? But I didn't have a discipline class, and I didn't have a focus class.
Right.
And discipline was something that now I'm actually like, recalling it all, like sitting here, and it's like you need to get some discipline. All right, then.
How?
What is that?
Right.
And what we see now in the world of leadership and motivational speaking and all of the stuff that pops up on Insta and YouTube and everywhere else, which I have absorbed many of, it's always saying the same thing. Find your goal, get your discipline, get your focus. And it's like, okay.
But what is that?
Yeah. And it's the 10 rules to discipline. But it's like, yeah, it's that, like you've just said, they teach you that's what you're doing,
right.
And that's it. And people that come out of the military all have that, which is right or wrong, that's my objective.
It's, I always give this example. So after an exercise, maybe we've been there for 5-6 days, yeah? You'd probably had, if you're lucky, 12 hours of sleep. We still have to drive back. So a convoy, right? So I always drive at the back, mainly because once I'm behind a wheel, I don't care what happens. That's it. However, sometimes people kind of fall asleep, right? And then kind of waves out, and then you literally press on the air horn, and then it goes right back, right? It's not that, it's not whether we slept or not, right? It's having that discipline. There is a job that needs to be done, right? Yeah, I might not have slept in the last 72 hours. However, I still have to get back. I still have to drive that 3 hours back to my base to my unit. So how do we do that? Right? Because it's not an individual work, is it? It's not. So whoever drives at the back is always monitoring. Whoever drives at the front is always monitoring back and forth. So it's 100 meters in between trucks. Because for any civilians that come in, so they can, wave out of view, and you're straight heading out. But it doesn't matter at the end of the day. You still have to drive that whatever amount of, and then you still have to unload all that kit, right? You still have to do your action report. And by the time you get home, and I remember the only thing I was able to do is drop my kit at the door, get into the shower, and then literally fall into my bed and then sleep for minimum 15 hours. And I won't even know where I am, right? And then the next day I've got school. It's Monday, I'm up again, I'm back to school. Now I do that until Friday, and then Friday afternoon, and then I'm getting yelled at to get on the truck so we can drive as quickly as possible, right? You don't get taught that. Now it becomes part of your programming. Like if you've got something you need to do, really, sleep is not an issue. Like sleep is not an issue. You know what I mean? Like, or food is not an issue, right? Because then I'm like, okay, well, I need to get from point A to point B. And let's go. How do we do that? And I think a lot of times school doesn't teach you that. School is more of, right now, at least it's becoming, in my perception, not perspective, perception, is that you're there for 8 hours.
Oh.
Yeah?
Sorry. Sorry. Got a little watch interlude there. Forgive me. Go on.
But yeah. School, what does it do? You're done. And a lot of the kids, the summer comes, they chuck it. And I always talk to parents about regression. Did you know there's actually a regression that happens when you're off school for so long?
You're correct, because you get 6 weeks off in the UK, where
2 months off here, right?
Yeah.
So that literally, if you haven't done any kind of reading or any kind, and I always ask
sorry to, which is actually now, which is quite odd.
Right.
Where you go into preparing you for the working. Well, I've never thought of this.
Right.
Preparing you for the working world, but we don't get 2 months off in the summer.
No. Yet you get 2 months off, but they never give you what to be. Some schools would give you reading lists, which is great, but never give you what to do for math. What should I practice? Yet when you go back in September, they expect you to be exactly where you are, and then start from there, and then move forward, right? And then kids are struggling, and they wonder why the kids are struggling.
Yeah, because and I wonder how Media One would operate if the boss went on holiday for 8 weeks and just said, here's a list of things.
Yeah.
I think we'd all do it. Do you know what I mean? I hope we'd all do it.
Yeah.
But it's an interesting principle. I have, because our time, as I say, it goes by very fast, doesn't it? But I have a sort of a question, which is, in some ways, do you think that, like you've said, being in the army, they are, like you say, sort of yelling at you to do that and get there and do this, and you are funneled and focused, and do you think that we're too soft on kids? But I will caveat that by saying, not that you're supposed to go to school and scream at everybody, but it's like, when I was at school, it's changed a lot, where now kids are going home and saying, oh, the teacher said this, or oh, this said this, and I'm very much generalizing, you know what I mean? And then the parents are complaining to the schools about it, and it's getting almost like you can't discipline, you can't talk to them in a bad way, you can't, like you say, because in the army, you have a choice, you've signed up for this. And so do you think that if there's that, based on what you're saying, there's that change of how we should try to focus kids and tap into what they are good at, but does there need to be more discipline to get them to go in that direction?
What is discipline? That's what we need to answer.
Yeah.
Discipline doesn't necessarily mean you have to young
exactly,
right?
Yeah.
Mindfulness, right? A lot of times that's what we like. Wait, why is this happening? And a lot of times we don't have the luxury of time, right? So I sometimes email parents and teachers, and I say, hi, we're currently working with this student, and these are some of the things that we've noticed. Could you give us a bit more insight as to this school, this student that you work with at your school for this amount of time, And no one has ever asked them that. However, parents always come to complain, right? Parents always come and say, oh, you spoke to my kids this way, you spoke to my child that way. Okay. We also forget as parents the elements of these people are humans at the end of the day, yeah? Yes, they're educators for sure, or they're teachers. However, they're humans as well, right? So maybe something is going on. Are we too soft? I don't know. Are we mindful? We're not. And that's there has to be a distinction, right? What is soft, right? Because yelling and screaming is not going to help. Trust me, I've got a 4-year-old. It's not. Being mindful and learning, okay, well, how do I respond to that, right? Because every child is different, and you need to know who your kids are, right? Like, you need to know, how would they respond? Like, how do I need to respond to this? What would be the best way for me to communicate this information for them to say, oh, to see a value in it? How do I create a value in anything I communicate to my kids? Whatever that might be, right? That's what we're missing. Because we know better now, right? Like, we know a lot more than our parents did, right? So maybe we should parent better as well.
I was about to ask, do you think there's enough education on how to be a parent? Because I'm not a parent, you know what I mean? And I want to say that again, because I know that anyone that watches this, my ideological statements and everything like this, they're not based on any experience.
No, again, too, right? It depends
on watching everyone I know that's got kids.
Right, and we've all come from various places of the world. We all have different values, right? We all have different views. It doesn't change. We will always have that, regardless of, whether you're from the same family. The way I parent my daughter is completely different than the way my daughter parents her kids. However, I'm mindful of what is my daughter like, what works best for her, what doesn't work best for her. Like what doesn't work for her at all, and I work around that. So there's no one box fits all. And that's also what we need to, I think, a lot of times we need to get away from, like, how are you parenting your kids? Let me see how you parent. Well, No. Find out what your kids are like. What do they like? What don't they like? What works for them? What doesn't work for them? And then you work around that. And at times it takes a lot of time for you to figure that out. And take that time, please.
Funny you should say that, because the kind of last thing I wanted to ask was, I went for dinner the other night with a friend of mine, and on the table next to us, there was 2 parents, 2 kids. I would guess that kids were maybe 11 and 7, something like this. And I noticed that the kids are just looking at iPads or mobile phone, and the parents are talking. And it struck me that, do you think there is a growing issue with the communication getting lower between parents and their children? Because I remember, back in my day, I had mum, dad, me and my sister, and that you're forced to talk to each other because no one's got any distractions. You're at the dinner table, and I'm making noise or sister's making noise, and then parents are trying to deal with that. So they're like, well, what did you do at school today? I did this. And that through those conversations, you may say something like, I don't know, apparently I did well in this test. You did well in this, and it's like, but now is there just too much? They get the phone out, they turn the iPad on, and at least they're quiet and they're not making this unnecessary noise. But the flip side is, I'm not learning anything about my kids. Do you think that's got any weight, or am I just talking utter nonsense?
No, it's a reality, right?
Yeah.
Think about adult communication. Do you think we communicate better as an adult? We text. Maybe if you're lucky, we send a voicemail, right? That's it. That's what communication has become, right? Because we're so into all kind of gadgets. We don't have time. How many times do you call people?
Do you know what I think? The answer to that is, I remember a time without it. I say this a lot these days, but I prefer to call the person.
Right.
Now, what has happened, though, 100%, is that there are people that might be a bit of hard work. Maybe I talk a lot, right? So I am 100% certain that people will WhatsApp me because they're like, I don't have time for this guy at the moment, so I'm just going to send a message. And I'm sure there's people watching who go, he's exactly right, But I know that it's easier now for people to send messages than engage in conversations with another person, which I think long-term is having a slow decay.
And mind you, these are adults that you can have conversation quite easily. Kids are not adults. Kids, especially when they're at that age, you have to literally pull things out of them.
100%, that's what I'm saying. Yeah.
And that's exactly what it is, right? So it takes a lot more effort for you to draw things out of the kids, especially when they're at that age where they're questioning a lot of things, and they're like, mom and dad might not be right about this. However, you never find out because you never ask the question, and they're quiet, you're quiet, everything is good to go until things crash, and then you're like, oh no, things are not going great, Were things supposed to be perfect? That's what I always ask. I don't think things were supposed to be perfect.
Well, what is perfect?
It's progression, right? It's progression, right? So whatever was great and perfect last year, it's not anymore, right? And that's what it is. They progress as kids, they find out new hobbies, they find out new likes and dislikes, And as a parent, you constantly have to kind of tiptoe around that and then follow them along, right? Like, oh, well, okay, well, we don't like this today, And that's what it is. That's what parenting is. So communication between parents and kids not only has declined, but I don't think it even exists a lot of times. Again, I'm not speaking about everybody, but that's where we are.
Well, it's things like families have a WhatsApp group.
Right.
And as per my, like I say, sort of really unexperienced sort of statements, is instead of, parents shouting upstairs, dinner's on the table, it's WhatsApp now.
Oh, cool.
And it's this thing about how you're not hearing human voices anymore, which I don't know, I don't know how I suppose it all funnels into how people are going to end up getting their information with way down to so they don't teach, I don't even know the right term for this, and people are going to laugh at me, but they don't teach joined up handwriting in school anymore. So I've been told, because everyone's typing.
Right. Yes. So I had a conversation with a parent recently. It's true. It really is true, you know?
What is the right term for that, by the way? Do you know? I
Wait, for cursive?
There you go.
Yes,
So-
cursive writing. Wait, and that's what it is, right? I was having a conversation with a parent. It's so funny you said that. She was working with the girls to do their spelling test, and they've been literally writing it, and they're working really hard. And then right the day before they were supposed to do their test, they found out they have to type it. They don't know how to type.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And she was just, she's ranting, like, Nadia, no, like, what happened? She said, they have to type it. I'm like, type what? The spelling. I'm like, what spelling? At the school. And I said, okay. And have they been typing? She said, no, they've been handwriting it because I've been emphasizing how important handwriting is, how to write things. They need to learn how to. I said, yes. Now they have to type. Here are a few programs. They then have to start learning how to type. They'll be fine.
It's crazy.
Is it insane?
It is. It is. Look, we're coming to the end. I wanted to ask you, so what would be the one thing that you would like to convey the most to parents watching, children watching, or anyone you think would be relevant to this particular episode? Because it's a very, very important topic that you're very passionate about. So,
Really?
yeah, say, what would be your one thing you would like everybody to possibly take on board?
So the first thing is learn about your kids, literally. It doesn't matter how old they are. They could be 2, 3, whatever it might be. You watch them and you'll learn exactly what intrigues them, what encourages them, what inspires them. If you can tap into that inspiration, you can do a lot with your kids. It doesn't have to be like, you don't have to spend hours with them. 20 minutes is what it takes a lot of time. 20 minutes. Just let them be. Give them the opportunity to try. Let them try things. And when they fail, instead of saying, oh, it didn't work. Oh, no, that's sad. No. All right. It didn't work out. Let's find out why it didn't work out. And when it did work out, yeah, it worked out. Why did it work out? Like teach them how to go back, teach them how to self-assess, right? Like it's the only thing you can give kids is that. Another one is teach them how to be an educated person, teach them how to be a lifelong learners. Right? It doesn't matter what new thing comes into their life. It doesn't matter where they go in life. It doesn't matter what collapses or what goes up or down, which life does. Can they go back and say, oh, well, this is where we are right now. We need to get to that point. Let's do let's work. Let's anchor down. That's the only thing you can teach kids. Emotional intelligence, how to literally monitor and engage where they are. Like, oh my God, I'm feeling sad. Why am I feeling sad? Okay, well, this is what's going on. All right, so how do I solve this? How do I work around that? We don't teach that. Kids are sad. Yeah, of course, as parents, we're supposed to comfort, comfort them, and we're supposed to find out what's going on. But we also have to kind of mentor them into, how do I go from being really sad and to, oh, okay, I'm not sad anymore because now I figured it out. Kids don't figure out why they're sad about it. Whatever it might be, whether it's school or relationships or friendship, whatever it might be, they don't get to do that. So please do that. Everything else is, trust me, easy. They can learn anything. I always tell parents, you can teach how to write, you can teach how to do math, or you can teach anything else. You cannot teach discipline. You cannot teach hard work. You cannot. The only thing you can build on your kids is how to teach them to have strong work ethics, whatever that might be.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And we'll end that.
All right.
Nadia, thank you so much for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me. It was amazing.